Making your bed, yeah, that's a great responsibility for like a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Teenagers, you need to give them like real responsibilities. My kids don't earn an allowance, they earn a commission.
Meet Jon England, former principal in the American education system. I brought him on the show to discuss educational strategies to ensure your family continues to compound wealth while cultivating a stronger culture.
And we're talking about population decline. Start early. Teach them to be an adult early. Late 1700s, early 1800s, a young man would learn a trade and be ready to start a family by the time they were probably 18 or 19.
If you have teens or will have them one day, we cover how to set them up for personal success while also benefiting from the collective of the family and contributing to it as well.
Teenagers have this natural desire to rebel. What I think we can do is give them this rebellion against the low expectations.
John's developing a private school, and a little bit later in the episode, he gets into the educational strategies that you need to raise capable family leaders. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy.
Oh, the public education system is broken. I don't think it's broken. I think it's doing what it was designed to do. Part of the reason I left the public school system, it was undermining the family itself. College does help raise your income level. It's not necessarily family tree changing levels of wealth. Let the kids become experts in the things that they're interested in. And
Like, we agree on so many points with the education system, and just before the call, we were talking about teenagers and how in the 1920s, well, that was kind of like a term that was invented around then. Prior to that, you were either a child or you were an adult. What do you think it is that term was invented, and where did it come from? Do you know?
I don't know why the term was invented, but I think there was this push for wanting to keep kids in the school system, and so they needed a reason to, and so they called them teenagers, adolescents. All of that came about around the same time, saying, "Hey, this is an in between stage between a child and an adult." And it's a time for kids to get ready to launch and become an adult. But what has it's turned into is really just a extension of childhood,
Hmm.
and kids are launching later and later in life, and it's frustrating actually as I look at it and I look at the cool things that I think my teenagers can do. So yeah,
It's almost like a
it's
limbo.
frustrating.
Hey, it's
Yeah.
like a limbo that kids are left, and they're not quite sure where they stand. And instead of us giving them that place in the family, we kind of just leave it up to the system to decide, and oftentimes it doesn't necessarily have the best outcome. I mean, it was quite a while ago. I was a teenager now, but I can still vaguely remember it, and that you kind of left to your own devices a lot of the time, and when we aren't when we don't have that sense of purpose, it's easy to get lost, and they're very very formative years. So, what can we do for our teenagers to help bring them in line with family goals and family ambitions to help them become better, more capable people?
Yeah, and one of the things I was just thinking about as you were saying that is, teenagers, they have this natural desire to rebel, I think, against their norms. They're figuring things out, and it's a time that they are exploring. So I kind of want to give them, and what I think we can do is give them this rebellion against the low expectations. They want to be adults, so let's teach them the adult things to do. Hey, you want to make money. Let's teach you how to either start your own business or how to go get a job. Hey, you're afraid of this thing of like public speaking. Let's teach you how to public speak so you're not how to do public speaking so you don't have to, be afraid of that anymore because that's a valuable skill.
Hmm.
And I think that really when we're talking about these teenagers, it really is this lack of expectations that we have for them. When back, I referring to the American Revolution, late 1700s, early 1800s, a kid was 14 and 15, and they would leave home. A young man would leave home, become an apprentice, and learn a trade and be ready to start a family by the time they were probably 18 or 19. And now look at when people are starting families. They're starting them later
Yeah.
and later. And we're talking about like, population decline and how that's going to impact the economy. You know, start early. Like teach them to be an adult early is really the premise that I'm coming from.
Well, they became more independent as well. Like
Yeah.
part of the reasoning behind having children later is that, that people don't feel ready, like they don't feel financially prepared. And part of that is because they spend so long in this system that really only prepares them for minimum wage, if that. Like a lot of the time kids get a wake-up call when they enter the real world, and suddenly they've got to earn money and they've got to pay their way, and it's not quite what they were expecting. So what are some things that we can do during their teenage years to help guide them towards this? I mean, you mentioned helping them learn how to make a living. Do you think we should be starting apprenticeships earlier, or helping them start businesses that they can then build up into adulthood, or what does that look like?
Yeah, and I think that's really dependent upon the individual student, right? I look at my 17-year-old daughter. She loves writing and wants to become an author. So I'm leaning into that. Like she's currently taking an advanced writing class. She's met with published authors who are fairly successful. I mean, they're not the biggest known names in the world, but regionally they're well known and sold, tens of thousands of copies of books. And so
It's
she reached
impressive.
out to them. I encouraged her to talk to them, and they're happy to do it because
Hmm.
not very many people are actually reaching out to them because they're not selling millions of books yet. And they just talked to him about the business. And her plan for post high school is to actually take a writing course. It's a 3 year program that teaches her the business of being an author. So it's not just about writing, it's about like, okay, how do you run your business that is your authorship as well? So that I think those things can happen for a variety of children. I have another young man in my neighborhood. He is so gifted mechanically. Like he can take apart a motorcycle and put it back together blindfolded. I swear he can. Like he just knows so much about it, but he struggles with like regular academic stuff. Like, why does that kid need to be pushed towards college and academics? Why not help him start his own motorcycle mechanic shop? People in the neighborhood are already bringing him his motorcycles. Help him learn to start a mechanics business, and he can start repairing their motorcycles for money, and starting to learn that responsibility of and when they're young, the nice thing about being young is you have time to make mistakes and
Hmm.
recover from them. And so that's really what it is. And again, it's going to be dependent. We're not all the same. What everybody wants out of life, what they're good at, is different. And so it is going to be a child by child specific, and finding out what they're passionate about and helping them build that.
Well, you've been a man on the inside. You've been a school principal before, and it was a high school, wasn't it? That you were a principal
No,
for.
I was actually elementary. I was a younger kids,
Elementary.
primary
Okay,
school.
so
Yeah.
when you saw these kids developing from a young age, what do you feel like was lacking that would kind of lead them into this more specific direction for them? Like school's very broad, but do you think that we could perhaps make elementary school a bit more specific, tailored to what the child might be show an affinity for?
Yeah, I think we could. Elementary school, high schools, it doesn't matter. But that is probably one of the critiques I have of the current system
Hmm.
is every child is treated the exact same. Some kids are going to learn to read earlier, some are going to learn to read later, and honestly, that's probably what the younger grades should all concentrate on is reading, because once you can read, the whole world's open to you.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah, like you can become a mathematician if you know how to read well, and
yeah, I
and
suppose so.
and
Yeah.
that's all you need. I mean, you can figure out how to read, Newton's Mathematica Principia, right? And away you go, and you can become like Newton. But that's really like I think what you need is this individualized care. And honestly, like the development of technology is, while we need to have some restraints on it, it can be used, and I think it is being used to help really individualize like a classroom of kids. In a homeschool setting,
Okay.
we can do that super easy because it's,
Hmm.
3 or 4 kids at a time. You can be like, oh, hey, here's your project. Go start working on that. I'll work with you one on one and all of those things. But if you have a classroom of 20 or 30 students, at that point, it becomes really hard to give them that individualized care. But some of the main instruction can be delivered through technology so that they're doing it on their own level and advancing at their own pace.
But And saying that, like, because we have to put so many students into a classroom, there's only so much individualization that we can do as a society or as an education system. So
In
if
the current
there
system,
are,
for sure.
oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
there's
I mean,
schools out there that are already doing this, um,
okay, does
but
that
they're not in the
require more
public system.
teachers or
No. Well,
okay?
they're definitely on the smaller size. I mean, maybe it's like 20 students per teacher
Hmm.
versus like 30, which is pretty normal in Utah where I live.
It's going up
Um,
here, yeah.
yeah, for sure. But they're able to do it. They build
Okay.
it into how they operate. So the teacher becomes more of a goal setter and a coach with the student, and then the students are looking at their own data and being like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
really struggling here. Maybe this next week I need to really focus on, maybe it's fractions or whatever. I need to focus on adding and subtracting fractions. And so they'll dive into that for the next week. And so the teacher becomes a coach instead of,
Hmm. Okay.
yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's super
interesting. Well,
interesting.
and say, it's like, do you find that elementary students are capable of that kind of self-directed learning?
I think so. The older ones for sure.
Hmm.
By the time they're, 9, 10, for sure.
Hmm.
I think for the younger kids, it's probably going to be, a little bit more reliant upon the adults. But again, there's methods that are out there for letting the kids still go at their own pace. There's technology that allows them to learn phonics at their own pace. Like, it exists, and that is what's really exciting to me.
Hey, just a quick interruption for me. If you're enjoying the show, you can help me out with a like and subscribe. There's also the top link in the description where I write on strategies on how to build a legacy family. You can check that out as well. Thanks, and back to the episode. Yeah, I mean, just between our three kids, I can already see their different learning styles. They're 7, 5, and 2,
Mhm.
and I can already tell they're very different learning styles. Like my middle child is my son, our older son. He is a little. He's not as good at reading as his sister was at his. My daughter, her reading is insane. Like right now, she's very interested in astronomy. Right, so she is going through all of our space books. She's telling me about all these different nebulas and the density of the planets.
Yeah.
I have a passing interest, I
Should get
suppose. I had
along
a
with my
telescope when
wife.
I was
My
younger,
wife
but
is loving
yeah.
astronomy right now.
Oh, it's a fascinating subject.
Yeah.
But I might have to grab her a telescope so she can explore the stars. Not in
Yeah.
summer though. It's too late for her to stay up to take a look. But in winter, I think it'd be a good thing to do. But so you've seen a lot of students come through in your time as a principal. How did you find that school shaped them from when they first entered elementary school to when they left? Did you find that there was some commonalities between the children's personalities, or what happened there?
Yeah, it was either you became quiet and compliant, or you became rebellious and labeled as a bad kid. Like, those were the two norms that came out of it. Neither one of those had anything to do with actual academic achievement, by the way. You could be rebellious and a high achieving student, which I saw
Interesting.
many
Okay.
of them as a principal. And you could be the quiet, most compliant student and 3 or 4 years behind where they
Oh,
expect you to be.
okay. Hmm.
And part of the reason that that happens is those quiet kids slip through the cracks really easily. It's super easy to see the rebellious kids who are causing a scene than the kid who's
Yeah.
just sitting there quietly looking at a book. Maybe they're reading it, maybe they're not, you don't know, but they seem to be doing the right thing. And so you don't notice the problems early with the quiet kids.
So do you find that the school's more willing to, maybe not willing to turn a blind eye, but willing to invest less time in the quiet children? Because maybe it might sound a little bit conspiratorial of me, but maybe it's done its job.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure that I'm going to separate out the system from the actual teachers within it,
Yeah,
because
of
I think
course.
the system itself, and a lot of people will say, "Oh, the public education system is broken." I don't think it's broken. I think it's doing what it was designed to do. It was designed to create a compliant population. It was
Mhm.
designed to teach to the middle, and then as that middle fell, because the higher kids aren't achieving as much, you're teaching to a lower middle, and it just slowly declines. And I don't know, that was definitely not the expressed intent of anybody who um, was putting together a public education system, but compliance definitely was. You can look at different countries as they get ready to implement a forced compulsory public education system. They say things like, so that children can learn the proper way to behave, things of that nature. Horace Mann, who started the public education system in the United States, said that he views parents as giving up slaves to the cause when talking about the public
Yikes.
education system. Yeah,
That's a
it's
bit on the nose.
it's yeah, it totally is. But he's also saying, like, I was worried about kids and their ability to learn, and so that's definitely something that he worked on and
Mhm.
wanted to have happen. And honestly, like, he was probably worried about immigrant populations, and that's why he implemented it. When you look at it, he talks about that. He homeschooled his own kids, but he still
Interesting.
wanted everybody else to send their kids to the public education system.
Well,
And
and saying that, in the defense of the public education system, it did elevate reading levels. Like there was and I think a lot of the work was done by churches prior to that. But when the public education system came in, that's when we really saw a lifting rate in reading levels. But now that I mean, correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's my understanding of it. But now that we have achieved that, and we have, like, I think it's pretty fair to say everyone can read. I mean, there's obviously some people that can't, but as a generalization, everybody can read now. Now that we
yeah,
have that skill and this um, general level of education within at least Western populations, could we potentially do away with public schools and replace them with something else?
yeah, I think we could. But I'm not sure that everybody can read. I mean, there's a story that came out last year. It
Hmm.
was a girl on the East Coast of the United States. She graduated as an honors student from her high school, and she went to college and
Okay.
said, I don't know how to read. So I'm not sure that reading levels are the same as what they were. In fact, I've seen
Yeah.
information, and I need to search deeper on this. So please, like, everybody who's listening, fact check me on this. But
Yeah.
literacy rates in the late 1800s in the United States were higher than they are today.
What? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So,
Okay.
and you
I
can
didn't know
even
that.
look at graphs of the achievement of students and things like that, as the years progress, and it is slowly declining over the years, and
That's
it's
scary.
it's not working well.
Hmm.
It's not achieving the
Well,
the express goal.
yeah. This well, I bet you they know the name of every Fortnite skin though. that's that's a potential unfortunate reality. But you said earlier, like these students that aren't going through the education system in the best way, as far as the education system is concerned, are getting labeled as rebellious. But yet,
Hmm.
when we look at, say, a magazine cover featuring some hotshot entrepreneur, I swear to you, the word rebellious is on there just about every single time. So it's like the
Yeah.
word rebel. It's like what they teach us to be in school. It's the opposite of what success is in real life. For another example, is a lot of successful businesses have taken somebody else's business, basically copied it, and then improved it. Whereas, in school, when you have to give the answers, and I can understand the reasoning, don't get me wrong, but we're taught it's very bad to copy off the kids that are smarter than us. But yet, the best entrepreneurs in the world get the people that are smarter than them in one place and then build a business off the back of that. So how can we kind of cultivate that attitude without it being rebellious against the family or against society as a whole? How can we build that kind of um, entrepreneurial rebellious nature in our children?
Yeah, and again, it comes down to what are they rebelling against. The low expectations. If you're rebelling against the low expectations, go for it. Like, dive in and let's overachieve and become the news story because I'm a 17-year-old entrepreneur who just created the next new thing. There's groups out there, at least in the United States, who are looking for young people who have big ideas and are working on projects around things like energy and technology and education and all these different things. And they're looking to invest. They have millions of dollars that they're looking to give to the right person to expand their idea. And the one I'm thinking of, it's called the 1517 Fund here in the United States. They are absolutely looking for kids who have not graduated college. Maybe they're still in high school and they just have this amazing like idea of like, no, let's go out and change the world. Let's, create a new medicine that's cheap to produce, but super effective with little low side effects or something like that. And so these kids exist. But I do think that the way that we're educating kids and the whole process, right? We start with preschool to get ready for kindergarten. We finish kindergarten so that we're ready for first grade. And we do first grade and second grade and all the way through high school. And we do all of that to get ready for college. And we use college to get ready for our job. And then we use our job so that we can retire. And then we retire. And then at that point, we can live our life. That's the standardized system. That's the middle class trap that has been developed for us, right? And so, yeah, they want people to go to college because they'll become good employees at their next job instead of their own bosses. And I was in that kind of mindset for a while. I'll admit it. I mean, I taught in public schools for 14 years. I thought college was going to be the best thing to help kids get out of poverty, and college does help raise your income level for sure. Don't get me wrong,
Hmm.
but it's not necessarily family tree changing levels of wealth that you could develop if you go out and you start your own business. And if you start your own business early, you have much higher levels of success because you're willing to take bigger risks. Me taking a risk financially
Yeah.
right now where I've got 5 kids, that's a very different prospect than when I was 20 or 21
Yes.
and had unmarried and had no kids, right? If I go take a financial risk, I have time to recover from that. And so it's a very different prospect.
Oh, definitely. Well, you've said earlier that we have to try and create this rebellion against low expectations. So, what more
Mhm.
specifically does that look like? How can we? Can you give an example from your own life and what you've done with your kids?
Yeah, like I said with my 17-year-old for sure. Um, she she's on her way to becoming an author. But I look at so she's not the oldest. I have a 19-year-old currently serving a LDS mission for the church that we're part of. But I remember when she was in junior high, the grades she was getting from the local public school were like D's and F's, and she met with a school counselor, and the school counselor's like, "How are we going to get your grades up? What are you going to do?" She's like, "Oh, I can get straight A's." And there was like 2 weeks left of the semester. I can get straight A's. And the school counselor's like, "Ooh, that's a little hard. Maybe just go for like C's and B's. And if you get C's and B's, we'll give you like a candy bar if you do that, right?" And so what I love is my daughter at that point just rebelled against that low expectations. So like, no, I'm going to get A's and I'm not even going to show up and tell you about it. I'm just going to go get them because I don't want your dang candy bar. I want to do my own thing and I can do these big things. And so she went out and did that. But again, it's raising their sights. I think it's giving them responsibilities, like major responsibilities within the home. You can start early. I look at my 10 and 12-year old. My 10 and 12-year old are responsible for going out and collecting the chicken eggs every day. They could probably have started doing that when they were 4 or 5 or 6, and I might end up with a couple broken eggs in the process, but they're learning responsibility, right? My 14-year-old wants to have her own pigs, and so we're like looking for a place where we can put pigs because I live in a suburban area. I've got maybe a tenth of an acre, if that, like that I'm living on. It'd be hard for us to have pigs. We can have backyard chickens, but pigs makes it a little bit difficult.
Yeah,
So
they're
we're
noisy,
looking
man.
for
Yeah.
yeah, they're noisy, and I'm worried about the smell and things like that. But we have neighbors. It's We're slowly changing from a rural community to a suburban community So I have neighbors who still have lots of land, but they're not using it. I'm like, hey, maybe we can
Mhm.
just go lease it and let's raise like 3 pigs and see what happens. And so
Yeah.
she does that. Like she's responsible for going out and clipping the chicken's wings.
Okay.
She breaks our family bread every week, and we pay her for that. And so my kids don't earn an allowance; they earn a commission. They do job,
Okay.
they do jobs, they earn money, and that's how I've done it for the last few years. Like, oh, I need some money, Dad. Oh, what can you do for the family around the house to earn money? Here's a list of things. And so, yeah, she makes bread, and we haven't bought store bread for over a year since she started making bread for our family. And we're spending less money on bread because she's making
Mhm.
it, and she's making money. And so it's great. It works out well. And then she's like, oh, I want to go to the store with my friends and maybe buy a shirt or something. And she does because she has her own money. And so just giving them those responsibilities, I think, are the things that we can do, not these, you know, I, making your bed. Yeah. That's a great responsibility for like a 5-year old,
Mhm. Yeah.
teenagers. You need to give them like real responsibilities, and yes, they should make their bed too.
Mhm.
That's really what it is give them something real, something that makes them feel like an adult, like the older kid that they are. Cause I know that my kids look around, and my younger two actually own a business. It's a snow cone making business that they run in the summers, and they sell snow
Wow.
cones. And
That's
they make
awesome.
maybe like $200 a summer or something like that. It's not a ton of money, but they make enough for them.
That's
I
good
mean,
for, yeah, it's good for young kids.
yeah, they're 10. They're like, I can go and buy the soda at the store anytime I want because I've got $200, and away they go.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's helping them do those things. Like, let's go try it. Like when they come to you and be like, hey, I'm interested in learning Spanish. Good, let's go try it. Let's go try it. Maybe you'll fail. Maybe you'll hate it. Great. Like, it's okay. Like you'll recover. And I think some of it comes from a parent's desire to make the lives of children easier. I think
Mm.
that's the big thing
Yes.
that's leading to these low expectations is I want to give my kids something that maybe I didn't have, or I want to help my kids have a better life than I did, which is a noble goal, but I think we do it sometimes in a way that actually limits their self-belief.
No, I think that's I mean that's very profound. I largely agree. I think that we do have to we do fall into the trap. It's a very big one of wanting to give our kids everything and easy life. And I see that all the time in the responses I get to some of my content on X, where people believe that because I want to set my family up for generations, that I want to make their life easy. And the unfortunate trap of that is if you do make life too easy for people, it makes lazy people, it makes incapable people. So I
Yep.
like the way that you're doing it, where you are giving your children the opportunity to contribute, and because it saves the family money or effort or time, they get compensated for that. It's quite an interesting way to do it. That's how I believe that's how Rockefeller did it with his kids. And I mean, look at them now. So
Yeah.
you're on a good path there. But so
Trying. I
yeah.
need to step up my wealth earning levels if I want to be
You
Rockefeller
just got to
levels.
buy out of the local oil tycoons and you'll be all right.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So your kids were in school at one point, and
They
you've
were.
transitioned them to be homeschooled now. What were some of the
Hmm.
differences that you saw between them in that transitional period where they were schooled, and what were the kind of maybe not negative sides of them, but what were some of the things that you kind of had to work to correct, let's say?
Yeah. My younger kids loved it. I've got 5 kids. My younger three, when we started, I think they were, 5, 7, and 9. So
Hmm.
they were all, school aged kids. But they loved it. They took to it right out of the gate. They love the fact right now that they're done with school by noon, basically every day, maybe 1 o'clock
Yeah.
if we sleep in. And their friends get home from school at like 3:30 or 4 o'clock and have homework, and they're like, hey, we're ready to play, like let's go have these things. And so it one of the things it's done is we've become far closer as a family.
Hmm.
since we started homeschooling. We are spending a lot of time with our kids and setting them up and helping set the direction for a moral life. And I'm not planning their life out by any stretch of the imagination, but we're we're really just setting them up to be stewards over their own lives and learn how to do that. I'm a religious guy. I'm teaching them the religious texts that we believe in. I'm teaching them about our family values. I even had the opportunity to have my dad come and tell family history stories. My
That's
dad's
cool.
in his 70s or 80s, right? Like, you can't really have that in
Hmm.
a public school system. We had a neighbor come and teach our kids how to um, run a loom and create their own
Oh
like
wow,
cloth
that's cool.
out of off of a loom, and just little things like that are what they're working on and what they're doing. And it's been amazing because we also, because we're not taking as much time with the academics, the standard academics, reading and writing and math and things like that, they have time to explore their interests. And then when they find it, we have the time for them to go and explore it without sacrificing our family time. And that's what I love about being able to homeschool. And just to be clear, not all of my kids are homeschooled. My currently 14-year
Okay.
old, she started out homeschooling at 9, but there's
Hmm.
a local small school, about 75 kids going there. She's a high school aged freshman, and she's going to this little school for tuition is pretty low. It's like $5,500 for the year. That's really low for a private school tuition,
Hmm. Yeah.
but she still has tons of time because that school is actually only 3 days a week, because they give them
Oh,
so
okay.
much to read. They give them a day at home to read because they have so
Oh,
much
okay.
reading material at the school, because they also value family time. And so I think
Right. Okay.
finding a way to align what you're doing. You don't have to do it through homeschooling. That's the way that we've chose to do it. But you
Mhm.
can find schools that align with your values too.
Yeah, that's something you don't hear a lot. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
guys I talk to are homeschoolers, and they are vehemently anti-system. But if you can find a school that suits you and your family and aligns with your values, then I mean, it seems a good fit. And speaking of that, you are in the process of starting a school, aren't you? Like a
Yes.
private community-run school. So why don't you tell us a bit about that and what that looks like?
Well, it's going to be focusing on the things that we've been talking about as well, which is we're going to leverage technology to be able to individualize the academic side of things. We want to be able to get through that with classrooms of 16 to 20 students in 2 to 3 hours in the morning. Just get
Wow.
through
Okay.
the main academics, and then use the afternoons for projects, project based learning, project creation. I'm envisioning teenagers who, like the ones that we've talked about, are gifted mechanically and want to learn how to start their own mechanic shop. Like, yeah, let's go learn how to do that and let's get you out and going. And then we have a built-in business mastermind right now of other teenagers trying to do the other thing, who can give you feedback on your idea and help you maybe brainstorm and look at things from a different angle. And so we're going to be using that. I've been able to participate in some really cool trainings that are different than anything I ever experienced in the public school system. Like co-creation projects, um, launch pad events, those types of things where you bring in your idea. You've worked on it for a little bit, and then you're like, okay, how do I get this to the next level? And at that point, we could bring in industry experts or a local business owner who could give feedback on their business plan and be like, oh, have you thought about this, have you thought about that? Oh, should we be able to like maybe limit this area and focus really on this? Teach them things like what a minimal viable product is. I mean, that's a term I've learned in the last 4 years. I didn't know what it was before that. Just teaching things like that, right? And teaching them the things that I'm actually learning right now on my own, is what are these different things that we can do, you can do, that you're passionate about, and maybe it won't turn into a career, maybe just follow your curiosity. I don't think we give kids enough time to do that, and that's what the school is going to do, is give them an opportunity to follow their curiosity, help set expectations that are at the moon or beyond, and do everything we can to help them start that path, but also let them be like, oh man, I've been 2 weeks working on this and I find out that I actually hate this. Great, let's change.
Yeah.
Like it's the best time to do it, because you should be exploring it. I mean, when I was 17, I didn't know everything I wanted to be. In fact, I never even thought about going into the education system. And so giving them that opportunity is what I really think we should be doing.
Oh yeah, and it's a time when you have the least overheads as well. I mean,
Yeah.
much like you, I've got a family, and I have to be much more calculated in my risk taking. But when you're young, you can spend 2 weeks on something and find out that you don't like it, and it's not. I mean, it's still time, but it's not a big loss. Whereas now,
Yeah.
you might only have 2 weeks vacation a year, and what are you going to use them for? You gonna waste them, or you want to enjoy them, or what does that look like for you as an adult? And one thing that I really like about your approach here is in the process of this project-based learning, you're showing your kids that you are completing a project as well. I mean, your specific children, because you
Yeah.
are starting a school, which is something that is not something that everyone would even consider doing. So there's a lot of skill involved in that. The other thing, I was laughing about this earlier when you were talking about your kids collecting the eggs and maybe having a broken one, is that when like we have chickens as well, and they go. My kids are responsible. We have responsible for the lambs, the chickens, and the pigs, right? And they're all like in a similar area. Sometimes they'll be split up, but generally they're in the same area. And all three of my kids go out to get the eggs. They come inside, and the youngest, who's carrying a few eggs, trips, falls, and smashes a bunch of eggs on the ground, right? But instead of and he was quite upset about it. But instead of the other two kids like laughing, like you probably get in school if you trip and fell,
Right.
the other two kids helped them clean it up and made them feel better. And one thing that I really want to build into my family culture is I want my kids to be best friends. I want them to
Yeah.
be able to build things together. And it sounds to me like what you're doing with the school is not only allowing children to pursue their individual goals and dreams, but teaching them to collaborate as well. Like sticking with that kid who's good at motorcycles, he might not be good at marketing, for example. And if there was a child who was good at marketing, there might be a good opportunity for them to collaborate. Is that something that would go along with your philosophy in the school?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I want to give kids every opportunity to explore their passions and their curiosity, which is why we want to really focus and get the academics done in 2 to 3 hours in the morning. Get that accomplished, and then give them the chance to go out and try things.
And for anybody out there that's wondering if 2 to 3 hours or 1 to 3 hours is enough to do the academics, in the average classroom, uh, out of an hour's worth of learning or active educating from the teacher, only about 8 minutes of it is spent actually learning, and the other 52 minutes, the other 52 minutes is lost on who knows
Right.
what. But yeah, Alec was the one who told me about that study, which I found really interesting.
Yeah, no,
So,
that's fascinating. Well, and here's the other thing too is,
mhm.
you could have a kid who looks like they're paying attention, and they
Oh
could
yeah,
just be off in their own world. I mean,
I
I've
could be doing it
experienced
right
that as a
now.
teacher. Yeah. Yeah, like that happens all the time. And so, if again, that's why we're leveraging technology, because it makes them an
Mhm.
active part of that
Oh
learning.
yeah,
The Maybe it's not 100% of the time, maybe it's 50% of the time, but that sounds like it's way better than the 8 minutes per hour. If I get 30
yeah,
minutes
whatever the
per hour out
percentages,
of
yeah.
them, that's 4 times as much as what they're currently getting. And so, yeah, leveraging that, you can absolutely do it. There are schools that are doing it. They're doing it well. They're doing it often, and they're doing it all over the place.
Well, schools oftentimes teach us to work, like you've said. They're designed to take us through this default path toward retirement, where we can finally live our lives when they're, you know, maybe not completely over, but we don't have we don't have that much time left. So, but part of like doing things that become successes is partially risk taking and partially hard work. And it does take a lot of work to create something, whether it's a successful career or it is a business or some creative endeavor. How do we teach our kids to create rather than fit into this cookie cutter mold of just working?
Yeah, again, I'm going back. I'm going to sound like a broken record, but again, I think it's this expectation level that we set for them. You know, I I mentioned the bread making earlier. My daughter wanted to learn how to make the bread. Let her. Like she's burned a few loaves, like, and we didn't. She had to do it again the next day, and it cost us a little bit more in flour and water and everything else that we put in it. But uh, it really isn't that big of a deal. But she learned. She learned her lesson, and then she's had other times where she let it raise too long, and then you get like this bread that's like just not good enough because it's not sticking together because it's been raising for maybe 2 or 3 hours longer than it was supposed to. Like, let them experience the mistakes. Like, it's only a mistake is only a failure if you let it stop you, right? If once you get knocked down, you're only defeated if you stay down. The minute you get back up, that is going to be the time that you say, like, no, I'm going to keep going. And so let the kids go out and take the risks. Like, let them take the, because again, we're talking about bread, right? We're talking about, we're going to raise some pigs and maybe she does it wrong and, our pigs don't survive. Like, I don't want PETA getting after me, but like, that's fine. Like, she learned a lesson. Like, it might not work out. Maybe the pigs die, or maybe like we don't build the shelter well enough, and some animal gets in and kills them. Like that happens. So, but it also will teach us the lesson. Oh, we need to do
Hmm.
better next time. And that's why I think the danger is with a lot of parenting today is we're not letting kids actually experience those mistakes.
Well, mistakes is where all the learning's done. That's
Oh, for
when
sure.
some of the greatest inventions have been created by mistake.
Yeah.
It's more about learning ways that things don't work, and along the way, you develop fluid intelligence to piece
Yeah.
together existing ideas in new and interesting ways. And that's part of the kind of education that I want to give my kids. Like one of the things that for my older son, I let him have free access to the plumbing supplies in our shed, and some of the stuff he comes up with, I mean, it's a mess, but it's pretty neat what he can put together. Like he's figured out how to put things together that I wouldn't have. In my mind, it's like, oh no, this is for this, but he's figured out
Yeah.
a new way to put it together. Is it practical? No, but it works. And it's interesting to
Yeah.
see him express himself creatively and learn what doesn't work. And now I can say, hey, look, this area of the property needs watering. Can you just set something up for that? And he will take all these random bits and bobs and put together this interesting watering system, which is fun to look at, but not fun to clean up, but fun to look at. And it's interesting to see that he's flourishing under that. And a lot of the time, with the education system, we're kind of taught that there's only this one way to do something, and that's just
Yeah.
not true. And I think that holds a lot of people back. Have you found with the process of your kids that have either gone to school and then homeschooled or then gone from homeschooled back to going to school, have you found that there's that kind of shift in thinking in the middle?
Yeah, and I experienced it with my older daughter for sure because she was in the public system the longest. She
Hmm.
ended up, that first year we started homeschooling, she didn't want to, so she kept going to the public school.
Okay.
And so and we just kind of sat there and been like, like you wouldn't have homework if you were homeschooled. Like, those types of conversations of just pointing out the obvious, just want to point out the
Mhm.
obvious and things like that. But she eventually became homeschooled, and towards the end of that year, that first year, we started making that transition. And that's the thing that I think is possible. I forgot what your question was though. I was
Me
so
too.
having so much fun
Oh, well,
saying that. But
but
I
have
want to talk
you
about
found the?
experimentation a little bit. Like it's
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
look at again those really amazing entrepreneurs. James Dyson comes to mind, right? He's still alive. Dyson vacuums.
Mhm.
Um, he had to create over 5,000 different prototypes to get
Wow.
to his
Okay.
first vacuum. 5,000, and they nearly went bankrupt as a family. Like he chose to just go and do this. But then when he got it, it he was able to, it started to make a little money and things like that. But 5,000 different ways of doing it. But now he has this multi-billion-dollar company. I just read his most recent autobiography called Invention, and he has electrical engineers working for him on creating lighter and longer lasting batteries,
Hmm.
right? A
Okay.
vacuum cleaning company has electrical engineers working for them. He has mechanical engineers creating the quietest vacuum motor that he possibly can because he wants his vacuums to be the very best. And that all comes through experimentation. And they fail and then they figure it out and away they go. But it's just amazing to me that here's all these things and he's taken that technology and he's turned it into other products now too. But it took him many years. I want to say it was over a decade of experimenting before he was able to come up with his first bagless vacuum cleaner. And now, you know, having a bag and a vacuum cleaner would be weird. Like we look at them like, what is this? It looks like ancient technology, right? He completely changed the vacuum industry because he was willing to take some experimentation. He was willing to take some risks and learn from the mistakes that he was making each and every day. And I think that's what we can do for our teenagers and give them that opportunity to make those mistakes and learn from them without it being as devastating as it when they are older.
Well, the thing is like a lot of the time, people, and I'm not any exception to this, they go into careers that they don't enjoy because
Yeah.
they never get a chance to experiment and find what it is they actually like and want to do, and they kind of pressured into taking the next step, the next step, the next step, or maybe better or for better or worse, depending on what your view on it is, they take a gap year, and during that gap year, they don't necessarily do anything productive, and they find themselves air quotes, but they're not really making those mistakes to find out what it is they want to do. They just maybe decide that they like France more than they like Italy or something like that. So
Yeah.
it's quite interesting to see that you're giving your children the chance to make these mistakes, and through your school, you're going to be guiding them through this process. And a lot of the innovation that's been made in the world hasn't come from governments and these sponsored programs, but they've come from families and the men that head them making these mistakes to create these new things. And like we've got a Dyson vacuum, they're great, I mean that they cost, but they're great and they last. And we could potentially, as a result, get a new battery which makes our phones lighter, or our our solar batteries for our solar panels more affordable, or whatever it might be. So it's very interesting to see how many parallels there are from the way the education system is structured to the way to the outcome it has on families and the people in them. No, you didn't quite answer my question before. So, have you found that your children that have cycled through each of the schools, or either the homeschool option or school, be it private or public, have you found a difference in their personality or in their willingness um, to make these mistakes, and their understanding of the fact that there could potentially be multiple ways to solve an issue?
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, I get off on my little diatribes and
It's
enjoy
fine.
hearing my own voice sometimes.
Me too.
Uh, but no, they absolutely have. Again, my second oldest, she's 17 now. We moved her out when like seventh grade. I was like 12, 13 years old. We moved
Mhm.
her into not homeschooling, but to the same or private school that's close by. That's low cost, and her whole countenance changed. Like she was worried about all the wrong things to begin with. Um, Not that she was a bad kid or anything like that, but I definitely saw an influence of the types of kids that she was with. She talked about how there were fights in school all the time. And then we took her in a school that, has a religious uh, undertone to it. It's not the main thing that they're doing, but they definitely bring God up. And all of a sudden, she just lit up. She became who God wanted her to be. And, she's the one who's working on becoming an author. I'm not sure she would have been able to do that through the public education system. I'm sure she could have. People do it all the time, but it would have been a much different path. And I don't think she would have started as soon as she has. She's about to finish her first book. She's
Wow.
been writing and writing. She's written over 100,000 words for this book that she's been writing and working on since June. And I'm excited for her. I'm excited for her to finish that. That's a decent sized book. That's a 300 to 400
That's
page book.
huge. Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
and
huge.
it will get edited down for sure. But it's an accomplishment. The fact that she's been working on it and she's finishing it, and you know, she's already said like, this isn't a book I'll probably try to get published, but I'm going to finish it because I want to finish the process. Like she wants to do that, and yeah, it completely changed it. One of the things I also noticed, going back to, so my son, I have 4 daughters. Youngest is a boy, and he was in kindergarten, and you know, there's a ton of conversation about the science of reading. Well, he was being taught using what's known as whole word reading. That's the kind of reading that doesn't teach you to use the letter sounds to make the words. It says look at the picture and then guess. That's what
Mhm.
whole word reading is. And we got him into a homeschool phonics program, and now he loves reading. And his peers in the neighborhood who are in the public schools, most of them don't. Some do, because their parents took the time to teach them to read. But he loves it. He will just dive into like books about World War II and other wars in history, and just he just loves it. And he's 10, and he's diving in, and he's learning. And you know, my wife and I are making sure that, you know, it's age appropriate for a 10
Mhm.
year old boy.
Yeah.
But he's absolutely like diving in. He's telling me th- telling me things about like the Red Baron from World War One, and how many kills he had as the fighter pilot. And I'm like, I didn't know that. Like, and so just letting them do these things has absolutely changed their outlook. They feel like they have the capacity to do whatever they put their mind to, but they're not required to put the to do any one thing necessarily. Like they can choose, right? They can choose writing, or they can choose something else, and really follow their curiosity. You know, we have some basic academics that we hold them to, but it's allowing their personalities, their interests, and their strengths to just shine. So yes, I have absolutely seen a difference in my own children.
So, in saying that, then, do you find that you, now that you're homeschooling, have a bigger impact on your children and their attitude than their peer groups do?
Oh yeah, like I feel like our family, like I said earlier, our family has become so much closer since beginning to homeschool, and really taking education into our own hands and making decisions with our children. So when our kids get to be, you know, 12, 13, we start including them in the education decisions, and they have a say in what they're doing. You know, my 14-year-old wants to go to this local private school, this small private school. And we said, okay, if you're going to do that, then that's what you got to do. But we also have this other program that you could do. You know, you decide. Like we tried to get her to homeschool. She didn't want to. She has friends that she wants to be around up there, and I get it. And it's teaching her well still. You know, it's not dramatically different than what we would be necessarily doing in our homeschool, because the people running it are former homeschoolers too. So it's a nice thing that way. Um, but yeah, I think that's the way that um, the way we're running it is super helpful. I've lost track of what you asked me again.
That's fine.
Man,
So,
you gotta forgive me. I get going and I'm like, oh wait, did I answer his question? I
I'm
don't
the
know.
same. I'm the same. No, I'm much the same. So let's narrow this down a little bit now. So
Yeah,
you're obviously building the school, and part of that is reestablishing the community aspect of school, because that is one thing
yeah.
through homeschooling that a lot of people contest. Let's say, like when
Hmm.
I went to public school, and we would go and would see our friends every day, and the classes that I'd look forward to were always the ones where my friends were in, and the ones that I didn't like were the ones that they weren't. Um, so part of maybe one of the benefits to a degree is our ability to socialize, and it's oftentimes we don't have to get into it now. It's the argument that everyone brings up, and we all
Yeah.
know the counter arguments at this point. But how can we foster that same sense of community locally through homeschooling? Like, obviously, you can go to homeschooling groups, but is there something that we can do, or do you believe that community schools or smaller local schools are the better solution to that?
I'm not going to say it's the only solution, but it's definitely a better solution. One of the things that is happening, at least in the United States, is schools are consolidating. The populations are becoming larger. And so to say it's a community school when it's a 30-40 minute drive away from your home is a little hard to swallow, especially if that's an elementary school, for younger kids, and those exist. Or to say it's a community school when 3,000 kids are going there, and there's no way that any like everybody in that community, the people in your neighborhood. So having a neighborhood school solves some of that aspect. Before we started the call, the one of the things we talked about is how in homeschool and homeschooling teenagers is very different than homeschooling younger children. And part of that comes from, I'm not going to say socialization, but social aspects that come from school, right? The local public school will have dances, they'll have sporting events, they'll have concerts, things for
Hmm.
teenagers to get together and be around one another, right? And I think that aspect of it is not as strong in the homeschool world. At least I haven't found them. I'm sure they exist, but that social aspect is missing in many cases. And letting kids actually be able to get together. I have teenagers, they want to go on dates, right? And so giving them more people to be around increases the likelihood that they can go on a date here, a date there, and start enjoying that aspect of their teenage years. Again, it's goes back to that, helping them feel like adults. And dating is a part of that. And so that's part of why we're starting the school, is again creating a close-knit community for the teenagers to be able to be social with one another and do things together.
Well, a lot of the times, the social stuff they get as teenagers in school can be detrimental, let's say. Like, the first time I was ever exposed to pornography was at school, and I think
Yeah.
it's that way for a lot of young men. And then there's obviously the more vulnerable gender, the young woman, that can be misled, let's say, and
Hmm.
we really need to find some good middle ground for both, our sons and daughters. And you know, I've yet to come across the perfect solution, but no, it definitely sounds like having our children as a unifying factor and community schools is a great way to bring community back together again. Something that we have largely lost in the modern day. So I'm excited to see what you put together. Now, you have been a principal, and I want you to give us an inside scoop here. What was the biggest threat to our children inside the education system that we should be aware of?
It's the reason, part of the reason I left the public school system, which is this: I felt like it was undermining the family itself. I was principal through COVID. I got in trouble because the state of Utah was considering a transgender policy, and I spoke out against that as a principal. I was investigated by my school district, um, and for basically saying that schools have no right to withhold information about a child transitioning. That's a parental right. We need to be sharing that if a school's seeing that. That's what the policy wanted to do, which was uh,
Sick.
so that public schools were legally obligated to keep that secret. And I'm like, no, that's wrong. You cannot do
Yeah.
that. That is the wrong policy. And but then just other things like during COVID, where I was told I can't have parents come in and volunteer in their kids' classroom. And evidence is very strong that when you have parents involved in a child's education, they do better. And
Hmm.
so we're taking away one of the best researched things and saying we don't need that in the school right now. And just all of that kind of culminated together. And there's schools that are trying to take over. In Utah, there are schools that feed the kids breakfast and feed them lunch, and they provide transportation, and they're starting to want to provide medical care and dental care. They're taking the parents' responsibility with these policies, and that's what drove me out of the public school system. So that
It's like they're
that
trying to replace the
education.
family.
Yeah, they're
It's
absolutely trying to
and it,
replace the family.
yeah, and it gets them hooked in a sense on the state and what the state brings and provides.
Yeah,
And that, is how you undermine a nation. That's how you replace a population. You break apart the family and then and replace them with
yep,
I don't think drones is the right word, but a close approximation to that, let's say.
yeah, yeah.
Loyalists, let's call them that.
Loyalists, NPCs, I've heard the young kids
Yeah.
call them,
That's
right?
another good one. Yeah, yeah. So Zoomer speak a little too advanced for our audiences. So I want to close it out with this. We're coming up on time now, and I want to. I got two questions here. I got to pick one. If you could rebuild the entire education system from scratch based on your experience as a principal, what would be the first thing that you would start with? What's the first thing that you would change about it?
I would make it individualized. Like, kids can go at their own speed, and they're because no two kids are the same. You could have two straight A students, and one kid's going to get math super easy. Let that kid become advanced doing calculus when he's like 15. Like, let that happen. But it's resisted. So I would just let kids go at their own speed, and you will achieve far more by doing that. That would be the very first thing I would do is, and we have the technology now to make that happen.
That's a good
Also,
point.
I
Yeah, 'cause
I would do way
oftentimes,
less. I would do way less in the public school system. We have, I think so many um, subjects that a child needs to take in order to graduate from high school. We they never get a chance to go deep on anything, and I think that's a shame. And because we're giving them so much, we're taking up more of their time, and they just don't have the time to explore their interests. So giving them their time back too. I
so
give you two
more
things.
that's fair. So more depth and breadth, you reckon?
Oh, absolutely. Let the kids become experts in the things that they're interested in. And, maybe they don't take um, the fine arts class and pottery and stuff like that, but instead take a ton of computer science classes. Great, let them. Or maybe it's the opposite. Great, let them. I think both of those things are amazing opportunities for kids to learn and grow.
Okay, no, that makes sense. And last question then: if you had to give three foundational principles or themes to educate your great great grandchildren, what would those three things be?
Three foundational things. Man, you're giving me the hard questions today. I'm That sounds like one that you ask a lot of your guests, though.
I'm always interested
Something
to
along
hear
those
how
lines.
people build towards their grandchildren and
Yeah.
great grandchildren. It's
Yeah. I think the
it's
three
something that stretches
principles.
the imagination.
Yeah. I think the three principles I want my great grandkids to have to be like, yeah, I'm in England. Um, and I came from John England, and he's a good guy, and I learned this principle because my dad learned it from him, and or something like that. I One of them would be just family. Family is the most important thing. That'd be the very first principle. Number two is explore your curiosity. We need to let kids explore their curiosity. And three, we've been talking about it, is take risks while you're young.
That does it for this episode with John. I've put a link to all of John's work in the description down below. If you want to learn more about educating your children, I did an episode with Alec you can go and check out over here. And if you want to learn more about the aesthetics that reinforce your legacy, I did an episode with Ruben that you can check out over here. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.